Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In our first story, the OP decided to send Santa Claus some heavy bags, and we'll tell you why. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Spin kick the mailbox. Our mailman had a mailbox at the end of our street where he'd pick up the mail at the end of his route to take back to the post office. One day, some smart butt kid started spin kicking the mailbox to knock it over and show off what he learned in karate. This went on for a bit till the kid's parents were told, and even his karate teacher. The kid was grounded and got kicked out of karate class. Unfortunately, a week after his grounding, out of spite, pride, whatever, he went back to kicking it over whenever he could. This continues for another month till one day the smart butt kid again does his roundhouse kick to the mailbox, and it doesn't budge. The mailbox stood up as solid as a brick wall, causing his leg to fracture and ending up having to wear a cast the rest of the summer. Turns out some anonymous neighbor decided to mail a bunch of sandbags with no return address the night before. The mom of the smart butt kid tried to blame the post office and threatened to sue. But since the sandbags had stamps and even an address to Santa, they were considered legal mail and not maliciously placed into the mailbox. And our second story. Steal my phone and try to sell it? I'll ruin your life and marriage. So I had an iPhone 6 that I had laying around for a while. Fully working, just a very tiny crack on the top left corner, so I ended up trying to sell it on Facebook Marketplace as I didn't like Craigslist. I put the listing up for $65 as I thought that was a very fair price. I had it up there for around 12 hours before I got some good buyers. Most of them were asking $50 or $40, and I politely declined as I knew because it was around Christmas time, I'd get an offer for the asking price pretty quickly. I soon found a message for $65, and we decided to meet up at a local park. I walked there as it was close to my house and sat on a bench for a good 5 minutes until I saw her. She was a female in her early 30s with long brown hair and was wearing what seemed to be a gym outfit with a thick coat on the outside. We talked and I let her take a look at the phone and showed that it was fully working and the little crack as it said in the description. She seemed to like the phone and I gave her a minute to look around the phone and web browse it to see how fast it was, etc. I asked if she liked it and she said something along the lines of, "It's fine." And I asked if she had the $65 asking price for the phone, and she reached into her purse, and right as she put her hand in it, she immediately started running away. At this point, I was very startled as I didn't expect it to happen at all. She effing jolted like Sonic to her car, and before I could take out my phone and take a picture of the license plate, she was already driving off before I could. I never got a picture of it as my phone is stupid slow, iPhone 6S, and even if I did get a picture, the car would be too far away, and at that point, if she put the pedal to the metal, my hands were shaking and I never called the police as I don't have enough balls to. So instead, I ran home. I told my parents everything that had happened, and they started asking me questions like, what did she look like? What clothes was she wearing? Etc., etc. Then my mom asked the golden question that my brain is too stupid to remember. What site did you sell it on? I had her whole profile on my phone. I started messaging her to no response. I went through her friends list and looked at every profile. I found her effing husband. I messaged him immediately asking if this was his wife. He answered the good old yes. I started explaining everything that had happened and how she stole my phone, etc., etc. He said he'll talk to her. I got a response like an hour later saying that he had found the phone and how his wife was saying that it was hers and she forgot about it for a while. Turns out they were already thinking about a divorce before this had happened, and I just put the cherry on top. I threatened to call the cops, but he demanded me not to as they were going through enough already. I regret doing this, but I did report her to the police after a talk with the husband over text. She got effing slammed by them. She was arrested for theft and one other warrant for a drug charge. She ended up getting in jail, I think, for a couple of months, I could be wrong, and her husband filed for a divorce. They had a 2-year-old baby, which I forgot to put down, and the husband got full custody of her. She wasn't allowed back into her house, and I'm not really sure where she is now, but the ex-husband said she's not well at all financially. I really regret what I did to her, as I think it was in the wrong for forcing the divorce on the husband, but in the end I got the phone back and ended up selling it finally for $60 without anyone stealing it this time. I hope you enjoyed reading this story I had from a while back, and don't make any decisions you'll regret. Just a quick tip: if you're going to steal something, don't do it with your whole name, age, picture, and name of husband on your profile. Thanks. And our last story. My mom ends up ruining the life of her ex-boss. So back in the 1990s, my mom worked for this big-time company, we'll call it Company W, as an accountant. Her boss, the head of finance, was a sleazy guy, and despite being semi-wealthy, it was a big company. And married with kids, he always tried to pick up younger women in the office. Eventually, after a few years, my mom, being the amazing accountant that she is, noticed small irregularities in several statements. I don't know the technical terms, but Mom realized that someone was embezzling the company's money for at least a couple decades. Concerned, she brought it up to the head of finance, who proceeded to demean her, call her names, botch her claim, and basically threatened to fire her if she brought it up again. My mother's not one to start crying, and instead sought to prove him wrong. However, a couple of months later, head of finance brought in a new lady, young, she was legit blonde, fresh out of college, to train under Mom. The mother instantly knew what this was and started putting out feelers for a new job. In the meantime, she trained the younger lady who, to quote my mom, was not the brightest bulb. Now, Company W had a policy when an employee was going to be fired. If the employee was being fired for reasons other than rule breaking, violations, etc., they'd be allowed to say they quit to be able to give their week's notice and get pay. A fair policy. So one day, my mom was summoned by head of finance and told that he was firing her. She quickly counteracted and used the policy to her advantage, which angered head of finance, but he had to comply. I know what you're waiting for. Head of finance told my mother in a rather rude way that since she was going about it that way, she might as well do an exit interview. My mother literally had a light bulb moment and said to him that in that case, she would. To note, an exit interview is a formal way of leaving a job. Akin to an interview for getting a job, it's a way for employees to share their experience and why they're leaving for records, including HR. You can see where this is going. So she was scheduled for the exit interview. When she went in, my mother had to, of course, bring in files relating to her work. I can't recall the exact reason, other than it having to be relevant to her reason for leaving, and show it to the interviewer. My mom brought in 3 large boxes of files, each one containing evidence of the embezzlement. She then presented it to the interviewer, who my mother told me was rather stunned, and proceeded to hand over all the evidence and proceed with her exit, including talking about the head of finance's reaction and how, not long after the new lady was brought in to replace her, Mom left the company that day, got new employment, and moved on. It was a decade later that she learned what happened. My dad was a delivery driver at the time and actually made a delivery to Company W. While there, he talked with an employee, mentioned my mom had worked there and how she left, and the employee told him quite the juicy story. In the year following my mother's departure and interview, her evidence was brought to HR and the CEO, who ordered an internal investigation. Hidden cameras were placed in the accounting division, every file made was screened and photocopied, tiny details scrutinized, and bank records triple-checked. I think you can see where this is going. Yup, the head of finance was embezzling from Company W. But it gets better. They got him on camera making out with the new lady inside the main office after hours. To add insult to injury, the cameras also caught him being cruel to those under him, touching other women, etc. But the biggest thing was still the embezzlement. Head of finance managed to, in over 30 years, steal over $3 million in Company W's earnings, from his days as a mere accountant and all through his promotions. Now, the exact way he was able to get that much over time wasn't told to my dad. I doubt the employee knew, but he did know the fallout. Head of finance was summoned to the Big Cheese's office the day after the evidence was compiled, and let's just say head of finance wished he'd simply been fired. He was arrested for the embezzlement and for sexual misconduct or something like that, as well as a few other things my mom can't recall. The new lady who came in actually revealed that he had brought her in after starting to date her and even revealed to her what he was doing. Her job basically had been to help him cover it up so they could live the rich life. She didn't even know what exactly accounting was, other than managing money. The perfect cover, so to speak. And now the ex-head of finance thought being arrested and charged was bad enough when his wife found out. The employee who told my dad this hadn't been present when the wife had come in while the ex-head of finance had been let out, but a friend of his had seen what happened. She had just went up, smacked the now ex-head of finance, screamed obscenities at him before saying she'll be seeing him in court for a divorce. While my dad couldn't learn exactly what happened next, he was clear that the guy's life was ruined. And my mom, while not a vindictive person by any means, did feel somewhat joyful over the outcome. Lesson to be learned here: never screw with an accountant who actually knows what they're doing. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.